Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome. I'm Zaina Al-Rawni,
And I'm Maryam Moulay.
and we will be your hosts for today's event. I hope everyone is safe and doing well, and to those who are sick, may Allah grant you a speedy recovery. We are gathered here today to learn from Zaid Al-Rawni's inspirational journey to becoming a worldwide activist and president of Islamic Relief Canada. Now, before we begin our program, we will start with Quran recitation and translation by Malik al-Bushi. Malik is a 15-year-old high school student in the 10th grade, and he will be reciting from Surah Al-An'am, chapter 6.
السلام عليكم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل إنني هداني ربي إلى صراط مستقيم دينا قيما ملة إبراهيم حنيفا وما كان من المشركين قل إن صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين لا شريك له وبذلك أمرت وأنا أول المسلمين قل أغير الله أبغى ربا وهو رب كل شيء ولا تكسب كل نفس إلا عليها ولا ترز ورزة أخرى ثم إلى ربكم مرجعتكم فينبئكم بما كنتم فيه تختلفون وهو الذي جعلكم خلائف الأرض ورفع بعضكم فوق بعض درجات ليبلوكم فيما آتاكم إن ربكم سريع العقاب وإنه لغفور رحيم.
Jazakallah khairan, Malik, for that beautiful recitation. To those who don't know, Zaid Al-Rawni has worked with Islamic Relief for nearly 20 years and is currently the CEO of Islamic Relief Canada. He has managed and monitored development projects in the field since 2002 and has been part of emergency relief efforts in Gaza, Darfur, Haiti, Somalia, Pakistan, the Philippines, and most recently in Myanmar. Zaid holds a master's in international development and an MBA from Warwick University. Zaid is also an avid reader and a distance runner. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Al-Rawni.
So before we get to the deep questions, we'll go through a lightning round.
We want to know, what's the best place you visited?
Best place I've visited? Ooh, that's a hard one. For natural beauty, probably Isfahan, Iran. Just a beautiful city, absolutely magical. The art and the river in the middle of the city is just wonderful. For resilience, probably Gaza. Like for the people, just an amazing, amazing place full of really strong people who are committed to doing the right thing and patience and being very patient with their lot, subhanAllah. Overall, yeah, hard one. Very hard one. Maybe those two can count.
Which do you prefer, texting or talking?
Texting.
Interesting. How about, would you rather invisibility or super strength powers?
Invisibility.
Do you have a favorite childhood TV show? If so, what was it?
The DuckTales. And Gummy Bears. There was a program called Gummy Bears we used to love as kids.
And who was your childhood hero?
My childhood hero. That's a good one. Probably my dad. It's a bit of a cover. Probably my dad. I've always been inspired by the man. MashaAllah.
Do you have a favorite number? If so, what is it?
I don't know if it's my favorite, but when you asked that, 7 came into my head. And I don't know why. Like maybe because there's 7 heavens, there's 7 ayat of sort of Fatiha, there's 7 seems to repeat itself quite often. I don't know why. Maybe some psychologists can tell us why 7's the number we like, 3 and 7 are numbers we like.
Now, can you give us a word in Spanish?
Hablo, no, estoy buscando a word? Just a word? Hola.
Go for it.
And final one, what's your favorite day of the week?
Wednesday, just right in the middle. Just a nice kind of, okay, the week is balanced out.
Yeah. Now let's get into the deep questions. We want to start right at the beginning. How was your childhood growing up? And were you always very active in the community as a child?
To be honest, I was born in Yemen, so my earliest memories are in Yemen. That's where my childhood is. But the to say I was active is a bit. I was part of a mischievous group. Me and my brothers, I have siblings who are around the same age as me, and we were just bad news wherever we went. So I can't call myself an activist, but we were always involved in and around the masjid. We were those naughty kids helping sometimes and feeling really good about helping, but generally messing about, doing more messing about than helping. I think I started becoming active later on, but no, as a child, I was bad. I was just enjoyed playing and mucking about and doing terrible things. Yeah.
So was there a certain point in your life where you decided, like, I want to be an activist, I want to join Islamic Relief, this is what I want to do with my life?
Well, I never wanted to join Islamic Relief. That was really, but I know it was very early on. I was probably, I think, 13 when the Bosnia War was happening, and it really, I mean, for a lot of us in England, it was a very important moment because we didn't even know there was Muslims in Bosnia. You know, we didn't know. We thought Islam was just an Arab, brown, Pakistani thing, right? We didn't know how Islam had spread all the way to the other side of the world in Indonesia. We didn't know there were European Muslims, there were North American Muslims. It was just, and the way the Bosnian Muslims were being treated, for some people who don't know, it was a really bad war where Bosnian Muslims were being ethnically cleansed, forced out of their homes by soldiers, just a bit like what's happening in Palestine right now. People are being forced out of their homes physically, but it was a lot more savage and industrial. And I think that was a very important moment for a lot of young British Muslims. It was an awakening. It was like, wow, this is not good. This is not good at all. And you started to question your own identity and who am I and where am I in this space? And that's when I joined a group called the Young Muslims very early on.
Yeah.
14. I was 14 at the time.
14. Yeah, that sounds like you've come very far from that point. And we know it's not always easy. So we want to know, what were some struggles that you faced on this journey, and how or what have you done to overcome them?
So struggle number one is there's a lot of losing when you're an activist. When you're fighting or when you're in a space where you're pushing for the wider community. You know, Gaza's been a thing since I was a kid, and it's still a thing. And that's hard work. You can switch off and say, what's the point? Struggle number two, and I'll talk about how I overcame the next, was the tough challenge of people saying there's a different idea for how to do things right. The reason we're such a mess is because this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And if you just listen to me and we do things this way, and don't listen to him. So people give you different ideas so everyone agrees there's a problem, but people give you different ideas about what the solution should be. And that can be so confusing, especially when you're 17, 18, 19, even 20 at university, and there's lots of people competing and experimenting and discovering themselves on what's right and what's wrong and formulating their own ideas. That was a really tough time. So with the first one, with things always seeming to go wrong and things always a bit like, oh God, the answer for that was being actually both hands is right. It's having a teacher or a wise man remind you that it's not your job to solve the problem. It's never our jobs as individuals to solve anything. We don't have the capacity to solve things, but it is your job as an individual to do your hardest, to do your best. That's it. And if you can go to sleep at night and you've had a good day, you've done everything you could, it's okay. Sleep. God is awake. It's a very, very famous Victor Hugo quote that I discovered years later. It's one of my favorite authors. And he says this, he says, look, if do your best, and at night sleep, for God's awake. And that's exactly true. With the other one, in terms of so many people giving you different ideas, if you try to ride solo and be like going from pillar to post, you can get really, really disorientated by that process of trying to discover new ideas. Again, you need somebody who can ground you, a murabbi, a teacher, an older brother, a father, a mother, an uncle, an aunt, and who can help you, who can act as your mentor and coach, and who can explore things with you outside the pressure of agreeing. Because when somebody's a zealot and they're trying to convince you this is the way, when I was growing up, there were groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir running around. There were groups like, very, I want to say, just very religiously dogmatic people. I don't want to mention names, but there was just lots of people who had very certain ideas, and the way you were doing things was absolutely wrong, and you're going to go to Jahannam, and you're going to fail, and Allah's going to hate you, and the Muslims are going to hate you, and all these things about what you're doing and how you're doing things, and you kind of, I don't want to go to hell. I don't want to upset Allah. I don't want to be the bad person. And so having somebody you can go back to and say, I've just heard this from person X or person Y or person Z. What do you think? But somebody who's calm, who's older, it can really help. And for me, that was my father. I'd come home after 2 weeks on university, bashing, arguing, fighting, and getting lost because I didn't know all the answers, and getting overwhelmed by people who thought they didn't know who thought they knew all the answers. And actually, Dad was brilliant at just saying, hold on, let's walk through this. Let's have this conversation and walk through this argument, this logic, this idea that there's only one group that's going to make it to Jannah. There's only one way to do things. So there's only one, and let's see where that ends. Okay. So that's really important. So if you do have somebody who you trust, who you love, whose ideas you respect, always go back to that person and make them allow them to be your litmus test of ideas. If you don't find them, really find them. In Winnipeg, you have some amazing people. Mashallah, I've been to your city a few times, and there's some really wonderful people who are very thorough, very clever, very smart, way smarter than I've ever been in my entire life. Like people like Zaid, Idris, and others who just, mashallah, center yourselves around people like that, and you'll be okay.
So you slightly answered this question, but with all the challenges that you face, is there one thing specifically or a person that inspires you to keep doing what you're doing?
There's so many inspiring people. Alhamdulillah, that's one thing that hasn't. If you're in this space, you're constantly lifted by amazing people, right? You'll go to places like Darfur in Africa, and there'll be some immense people who are facing challenges which I would crumble under. I'd be like, what? My village was burnt. My people were, the women in my village were raped. Kids were killed. It was just a horrible moment for them. But I'm still trying really hard to help other people. Not me. I'll probably crumble and fall apart. So I find lots of inspiration in a lot of places. But ultimately, I said at the beginning, the person who has always grounded me in my life and given me kind of direction and almost an anchor, because you can blow left, right, you can make mistakes, get things wrong. Every single person who's listening to this will mess up somehow. It's just what we do as humans. We're very good at that. It's one thing we guarantee to do, like 100%. But having somebody who can not let the shaitan's waswasa whisper in your ear that tells you you're a failure, you're a mess, your life's a mess, nobody, but how can Allah love somebody like this? Somebody who can pull you out of that waswasa and bring you back to ground you in what's right. Or the other side, which is even a different sickness and a different attack from shaitan, is, oh my God, look how much work I'm doing, look how active I am, look how wonderful I am, mashallah, I'm the president of this club, I'm the, they made me the host of this show, I was speaking to the prime minister, I was speaking to the MP, I'm so clever, mashallah, I'm so well, look at me, right? And somebody say, no, come back here, sit down. It's never you. It's always Allah, and you're only ever a kind of at his disposal. So don't ever let yourself believe in your own hype. In the world of social media, lots of people believe their own hype, and that's quite scary, or could easily believe their own hype. So yeah, ground yourself. Find somebody you love and respect who can tell you, yo, relax, calm down.
And you already mentioned that with the work that you've been doing, you see many people's struggles and hardships. So we've wanted to get like an inside outlook on what is one experience that really touched you or impacted you in a way.
Oh man, alhamdulillah again. Like there's been quite a few experiences that just kind of made me dizzy. Like I'll mention two very brief ones. So once I was on a journey driving from England to China with a couple of kind of teachers and mentors, and that journey led us through Iran and Central Asia, and our car broke down in Iran. Okay, so the car that we were driving, we'd driven for 5 hours from one city, going 5 hours to the next city, and the car just broke down. Right. We were like, this is before mobile phones, before texting, before any of that wonderful stuff. This is 1998 or 99. And subhanAllah, qadar Allah, the car broke down, eventually just collapsed. We were driving through 5 hours of desert, and it broke down right next to a oasis. So there's some water, some trees. Like, well, at least we got some shade, because Iran's a really hot place. And at least we have some water, which is wonderful. It was really good, fresh water. And by coincidence, a family showed up. They'd just driven the same journey, but just to get to that oasis, to that spring. They were going to have a picnic. They bought their food out, and they were going to have lunch there. And they looked at us like, oh, people beat us to it. But they saw three men, two Englishmen, one British Yemeni. And they were like, so what's your story? So, my car's broken down. We're not sure what to do. And so this family said, well, look, first things first, let's eat. So they ate with us. They shared their meal with us. They didn't eat with us. They shared their meal with us. They were very hospitable. They were wonderful, wonderful hosts. And they said, look, one of you come back with us. We'll go to the city, which is another 5 hours away. We'll get a tow truck. We'll get the tow truck out to you guys. I mean, this all sounds probably mind-blowing for people. Why don't you just call the CAA? Again, this is way before mobile phones, and this is in Iran, where probably I don't even know if they have a CAA. And then so the guy did this. He took one of our team members. He took Abdul Alim Saunders, this amazing photographer, took him back to, and I was just blown away by the hospitality of these strangers. Then when we went, the truck came, me and Abdul Razak, Richard, jumped in the car. They took us back all the way to their town, 5 hours away. They put us up in their house. They had fresh clothes. Like, we had clothes, but they had fresh clothes for us to wear, towels, and, it's like a 5-star service in an amazing hotel. They put up their house for us. They said, look, welcome here. And we were so confused. We were like, what is going on? And just bound us the next morning. They said, look, you need to call your families back in England. And they gave us phones. And again, this is really expensive. This is not WhatsApp calls. This is like phone. And for every connection, it's $3. And then 1 minute, $1 or $2. After that, it's just like, wow, okay. And they let us stay in their house while the car was getting repaired. They found it was an American car. The only people who can fix American cars were in Tehran, the capital. So they had to send somebody to Tehran, the capital, bring them back to us. He had to then tell us what was wrong with the car. It was just amazing hospitality for a week from this family who asked us for nothing in return. They wanted nothing from us. They were just doing it just out of the generosity of their hearts. And I was like, wow, it really was. And the other experience was in visiting one of the hospitals in Gaza. There was a mother who was sad over her child who had been injured. And she looked sad, and she was like, she wasn't crying loudly, but she was like, oh, my poor son. And the doctor came over to her and he said, make your heart strong for him. You can't help him if you're looking like you're upset. He needs you to be strong for him. He needs you to be strong. And she goes, doctor, I believe everything you're saying, and I want to be strong, but I can't. I'm feeling very, very, I'm feeling low. And so he took her to one side, away from the son, and said some words to her. And she came back and she looked like she was up again. And I was like, subhanAllah, what did you say to her? And he just said, I reminded her of our, obligation to have faith in Allah Azza wa Jalla and to stay strong in the face of these calamities, and that these calamities are a source of reward for us. They're a source of khair for us. And I was like, oh my God. Like, we hear the theory of that. We hear the people saying, but when you see people applying it and living it in practice and saying, well, what's happening to us is bad, but maybe it's good for us in the eyes of Allah Azza wa Jal. It's just like, wow, blows your mind.
Yeah. SubhanAllah. There's some people with like such kind hearts.
Yeah, absolutely, mashallah. Absolutely.
So you've mentioned a bit about, the struggles that you've seen people face. And with the work that you do, you probably see a lot of people struggling in Gaza and other countries. How do you stay optimistic and hopeful for the future with all of the difficulties that you see people going through?
Yeah. I guess some people are natural optimists, and they just kind of. But I actually genuinely believe that we're already in an amazing place. Humanity, for most of our life, we were, living in small bands. This is since Allah created Adam, 15 to 40 people. You didn't live beyond the age of 30, 35. You were an old man at 40. You were really old at, old man at 50, 55. You were always scared for your life from lions and tigers and this and that and the other. And 6,000 years ago, we discovered, hold on, if we don't have to go hunting and gathering and running away from lions, we can just have farms. And then obviously we've had lots of bad things happen, but eventually life has gotten better and better and better for more and more people. So generally, the big story of humanity is we've actually done okay as a species, and Allah's blessed us in a big way. But a more micro level, so for example, you two today, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, would have had very different lives. Very different lives. You probably would have been married at 13, 14. You probably would have had your first kid, probably already in your third kid, fourth kid by the age of 18. And, just one of them or two of them or three of them would have died. And it's a really different life just 50 years ago or 60 years ago. Your grandma versus you, the lives you had were very different. So that's the first way. You step up and thinking, Allah's, sometimes we look at all the badness, but there's also a lot of khair. You're living better than the king of Pharaoh in Egypt when it was the biggest kingdom, because when you have a toothache, you can go to a dentist and get it fixed. When he had a toothache, they had no idea what to do or how to fix it or whatever, and just sat there, or somebody came with a hammer and knocked his tooth out without any anesthetic, or it was just a very strange, different world. He, could order whatever he wanted, but somebody had to be next to him. You have a mobile phone, you can press Uber Eats, and you fancy McDonald's? Go for it. You fancy some shawarma? Go for it. You fancy the roast chicken? Go for it. Just talk. We're in a very positive space. On a different level, there's still a lot of people who are in pain. There's still a lot of people who are suffering. There's still a lot of people who are hungry. There's still a lot of people who are not doing as well as us, who don't have Uber Eats, who don't have, access to dentists, who don't have access to safe to homes. There's still a lot of that. And the way I stay optimistic is, I did not create the world. Allah created the world. And there's nobody who's going to be more compassionate over humanity than Allah Azza wa Jalla. My job as a person, as an individual, is to do my best every single day. And to make istighfar for the many, many days where I don't do my best. And to make hamd and shukr for the days when Allah blesses me to do my best. To say alhamdulillah wa shukrullah for the days when Allah gives me the ability to do my best. And leave the rest to Him. This is something Allah will fix, and Allah will cause to end the suffering of the people hurting. We're only agents of His will when He wills it. And the moment enough of us decide that we're going to try our best and do our best, that's probably when things will change. That's probably when things will become better for so many people. But that's in the hands of Allah Azza wa Jalla. So you either have that mindset, or you drive yourself crazy and insane. Because there's so much pain, it's overwhelming.
Yeah, your perspective is refreshing, honestly. We know that just that idea of having shukr for Allah and all of His blessings, is, alhamdulillah, everything's just like you said, exactly. We wanted to ask about your past life. So we know you started out in Islamic Relief UK, and you moved to Canada and began working with our Islamic Relief. So how was that transition, and how are they similar or different?
Oh, so when I was starting in the UK, my first job actually was it's very confusing, but my first job in the UK, when I became an employee, not a volunteer, because I volunteered for Islamic Relief since when I told you about the Bosnia thing. The reason we knew about Bosnia was because people in Islamic Relief were telling us, we just came from Bosnia, and this is what's happening. And then they went around, the next time they went, they took some videos with them. again, before digital and social media, all that wonderful stuff. And they made recordings, and they came back and said, "Look, this is what we're seeing," because we weren't sure if they were just exaggerating or not. So that was, I started volunteering years before I became, but my first job was calling Canadians to tell them about Islamic Relief Canada. Because Islamic Relief Canada was still new. It was still 2002. There was no Islamic Relief Canada. They were still thinking of, well, there's Muslims in Canada. We should have an Islamic Relief Canada. So they started calling people in Canada, and the person who was doing the calling, by coincidence, was me. And it was I was still at university, but there was night shift, so it was a night job, because our time in England is, well, like right now in England it's midnight or midnight, whereas in Winnipeg it's 6:30 or something. So it's perfect for somebody who's a student who can just come in, do a night shift, just call people and say, "Hey, can I talk about Islamic Relief?" And most people are like, "What? No, you can't talk. I don't know who you are." People hang up the phone. Like the funniest was some Somali auntie who thought I was saying I'm from the Islamic police. And she was like, "No, I didn't do anything." And I was like, "No, I'm not the Islamic police. I don't even know if there is an Islamic police. And if there is, it should be shut down, because we don't need an Islamic police." So that was my first job. But then I went to Darfur. They said, "Okay, look, you've graduated now." So I ended up going to Darfur for a year. And it was, again, very different. It was like living in the field. It was a very different space. When I moved back to England from Sudan, in West Darfur, the idea was to go and live I was taking my family, my wife and newborn son, to Sudan to live with me, because it was a bit crazy to stay out there for more than a year, or without solo. But the tsunami happened, and the fundraising team in the UK office was short of manpower. So they said, "Look, before you go back to Sudan, can you help us with fundraising?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, I can. I don't mind. I can delay my trip for a few months. It's no problem." And it was so much. I enjoyed it so much. It was brilliant. Organizing events, talking to people, calling people, connecting people, because I knew the work. I knew the work was real. The work that's happening on the other side is real work, alhamdulillah. Right? So we flipped. So I flipped from being a programs person to being a fundraiser, and I stayed in the fundraising team until I became until I went down to London and was helping the team in London, which was most Muslims in Canada live in London. It's like most Muslims in the UK live in London. Like most Muslims in Canada live in the GTA, the same sort of thing. So I moved down there, and I was helping them, and then they said, "Move to Canada." I was like, "Canada? Where's Canada? I don't know Canada." I didn't know the capital. I knew there was something called Toronto. That's as much as I knew about Canada. I knew it was a blob on top of America, and there was something called Toronto. This is in 2009. I was like, "Okay, let's go and see this place." So it was very new when I came. The Islamic Relief was still really small. It was still a small team. And alhamdulillah, I was really blessed by bumping into people like the community in Winnipeg, the MIA, people in Alberta, the Rashid Masjid, the Calgary, the Muslim Council of Calgary. Everywhere I went, there was people who were volunteering and helping the work of Islamic Relief. And it was very small, but it was a beautiful journey. And I'm actually now at the end of that journey. I'll be leaving Islamic Relief at the end of this year. So it was just beautiful to be part of that amazing growth. And now there's teams everywhere, mashallah. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make our work sincere for his sake alone, and helpful to the community both in Canada and across the world.
So that's interesting, the coincidence from calling people in Canada to living here.
It's very confusing. Yeah, I still find that a bit jarring myself, to be honest. Yeah.
Subhanallah. So we know that an activist job isn't like any other 9-to-5 job. What does a typical day at work look like for you?
Yeah, it's definitely not 9 to 5. Like, if you want to be involved in this work, or if you want to be for most people, they do a normal job, and then they go home in the evening and they do their volunteer, they do their community work, the activism work. That keeps communities pumping, mashallah, and alive. Alhamdulillah, I'm lucky that my job is the same, but it doesn't stop. Like, so you start, and then in the evening you're still carrying on. And it's a lot of talking to people, a lot of planning together with people, because community work and helping people and connecting with people is centered around people. So I spend almost the entire day. I actually did this a few months ago, back in September. I was like, where does my time go, man? The week, especially with COVID, you're at home all the time. At least before you say, okay, I drove here, I met with this person. It's like, you were always busy and you're always exhausted come midnight. And so I started logging every single minute, every single day. Like, what am I doing? And most of it was conversations. So reading reports, writing reports, talking to people about the reports, talking to people about the work, talking to people about what needs to happen, planning, talking to people about the planning, talking to people when the plans go wrong, talking to people when things go bad, talking to people when, just all this talking conversation, which is quite, so a lot of it is talking and having conversations. That's where most of my time goes. A typical day would start with me looking at my tasks for the day, the things I have to do. And I typically have to read 3 or 4 reports a day, and I try and knock that off early AM, and then make whatever notes I have to make on the reports. And then I'm calling people all day, giving them my feedback on the reports and what I think should happen next, and what I think we need to plan, and what I think we have planned. And yeah, that's a very typical day. Lots of conversations. Thank God for unlimited calling plans.
MashaAllah, we know you've accomplished many things up until this point. And so we're just wondering, what are the goals that you hope to accomplish by the end of the year? We know that you said that you're leaving by the end of the year, but what do you hope to leave with your team? Like,
yeah, the most important thing now we have is to bring in the next CEO for Islamic Relief Canada, and who that will be, and finding the person who can take on the responsibility and do a better job than I did. And that's not going to be that hard, inshallah. So that's the first piece. The other big piece is to help write the strategy for the next 5 years with the current Islamic Relief Board and the senior leadership team. That's another big piece. And the final piece is to write down my key lessons for this team. Just say these were. I've spent nearly a decade and a bit in Canada, helping develop Islamic Relief and connecting Islamic Relief to our community. What are the key lessons? What were the key mistakes? And it's really important not to ever pretend that everything was perfect or everything you're amazing. God, it's only the barakah of Allah that gets us through life, to be honest. So writing the lessons of the many things that go wrong, just to make sure that people have a record and they can say, okay, well, we should avoid that if we can. That's another big piece that I want to finish before the end of the year, inshallah. So they're the 3 big pieces, inshallah.
Inshallah. Sounds like you're not just doing your work, you're also preparing the team for the work without you. So that's perfect. Inshallah. And so clearly, mashallah, just from seeing you in this event, you are an amazing speaker, mashallah. Were you always good at public speaking? And if not, how did you build that skill?
I'm one of 12 children. And being from a big family, if you're not a good speaker, if you don't get people's attention, mom and dad's attention, you don't get no attention. So we're all good speakers. So that's probably, it probably comes from being in a very, very big family and having to perform to get noticed in that big family. So I've always been okay. I've never been shy talking in front of people, talking to people, getting on stage. Even in school, I loved debates because it was like, yeah, my time to shine. Give me the stage. So yeah, I've never struggled with it. It's never been something that is a difficult. But I know for a lot of people, it's not the same. I know for a lot of people, and there are some amazing coaches who have had to overcome personal inhibitions and personal kind of traumas or personal hurdles before they were able to confidently speak with the same confidence that the two of you are showing tonight, mashallah. It's not that common, I know. I just know for me, it was never a struggle. It was never difficult. It's okay.
Do you have any advice for people who are not quite comfortable in speaking up about their beliefs and presenting in front of people?
Yeah, well, I say this advice to everybody when they ask for this specific question, and the advice is, don't let the shaitan's waswasa meddle in your head. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's never perfect. You get up, you say something, even if it's a complete mess up, come back again the next day and try again. So my advice is, because the inhibitions, the big hurdle is, I'm going to look like a fool when I speak. People are going to laugh at me. I'm going to fall off. I'm going to trip on stage. Something is going to happen. Right? So what? Like everyone is scared to get up. There's only a few people who are willing to stand up and speak. Just be brave and stand up, and don't listen to the waswas of shaitan. Like, it's firstly, most people are going to forget by the time you leave anyway. You're going to be saying, I said this, I said that, I said this. Most people have things to do, and They listen to you for the 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes that you're publicly speaking, and then they're going to carry on with the rest of the day. So nobody's that obsessed with you. You're self-obsessed. You're worrying about what you did say, what you didn't say, what you should have said, all that wonderful stuff. But most people just want to hear something interesting and like whatever they came to hear. So don't be scared and just don't listen to us. It's okay. Just have a go.
Yeah, you're making me and Miriam comfortable. We're going to pretend that we weren't nervous about this before.
Well, if you were nervous, you did really well, mashallah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We know that you being a leader comes with many responsibilities, and one of them is being able to make decisions in hopes that everyone will be satisfied. It won't always, you might always not be successful, but you try. How do you make those decisions?
The first thing is I never try. You can't satisfy everyone. That's like, don't do that. Don't try and satisfy everyone, because there's no way you're going to satisfy everyone. When you have to make a decision, you have to make a decision. But the one thing you do owe everyone is a very clear explanation of why you've chosen the decision. That's key. And 8 times out of 10, not all the time, but probably 8 times out of 10, when people hear why you're making a particular decision, even if they don't agree with it, they're like, okay, at least I understand. And you allow them a moment, if possible, to tell you why your decision is stupid. And don't get defensive. So this is a stupid decision, and let me tell you why it's a stupid decision. Or tell me why. And if you sit there on your high horse, because they could tell you stuff that you really didn't think about, like, oh, snap. Right? But if you're still convinced, okay, you've told me your reason why you think it's stupid. I'm not sure I agree with you. But thanks anyway. But you have to listen, not listen with a patronizing, go on, tell me. You don't tell me. Right? No, that's not good. Right? Genuinely listen to people. Once you've heard them, and they've given you no new data that says to you, this is the way you're going is the wrong way, then tell them, okay, I've heard what you're saying, and I'm still going to go this way. I'm still going to make this decision. And I know it's going to upset you, because I know you're against this decision, but I'm going to do it for these reasons. And if they're part of your team, you have to give them what your expectations are. And typically, your expectations are, even though you don't agree with the decision, you have to respect the decision. Yeah. But yeah, you're 100%, you're not going to make everyone happy. 100%. There's so many people who are mad at me. And it's okay.
And I think that trying to satisfy everyone is something that maybe discourages us with taking places of leadership. But I think that's a really nice way of thinking about it.
We all want to be loved. Everyone wants to be loved by everyone. Everyone wants to be Taylor Swift, where there's a billion likes and a million followers, and everyone tells you how wonderful your voice is. Oh, carry on. That's not leadership. You can't be a leader if that's what you want. Be an artist, be a singer, be something, be a comedian. Actually, even a comedian did. But a leader, yeah, you're going to have to upset a few people. But the thing is, to always remember to be kind, to be gentle, to be honest, to speak to people, and the rest leave to Allah.
So, alhamdulillah, Islamic Relief is very well known in the world now, and it has a lot of support from volunteers and donations. So how do you encourage people to donate and volunteer, especially sometimes people may disagree with your cause? So how do you get them to see the importance of volunteering or donating?
I think I'm going to go back a couple of questions when we talked about, how do you stay positive? I think everyone, even if they don't know they have to do their bit. All you have to do is say to people, you have to do your bit. Everyone agrees, I have to do something. Like, if your game plan in dealing with the world's problems and the community's problems is to sit there playing Minecraft all day, every day, or binge on Netflix all day, every day, you're going to wake up one morning feeling very rubbish about life, about how you haven't fulfilled your potential as a person, as a human being. And people eventually sometimes wake up and have that feeling. They come and they say, okay, where do I go to do something useful, to do something good? So our job isn't really to convince people that they should be doing something good. Everyone knows they have to do something good. Even people who are from different faith traditions or no faith traditions, everyone knows being a responsible adult who contributes to the community, to society, to the world, and helps people in need and helps people who are vulnerable are the best. That's the best thing from life. So our job isn't really to do that. It's not to convince people. It's to convince people that here's a space where you can do that. Here's a space where you can donate and it will make a difference. Here's a space where you can volunteer and you can make a difference. Same with MIA. Here's a space where you can donate to the masjid, to the jamia, to the causes, to the projects we're doing, and it will make a difference. Here's a space where you can come and volunteer and work with young people and mentor young people if you're a professional, if you're a, mashallah, a successful businessman or a professor at university or a doctor or whatever you are, and you can make a difference. So those are the kind of things that I think I've spent most of my time doing. It's not convincing people you should do this, because if somebody has to be convinced you should do this, they're in the wrong mental space for me to even have a conversation. It's if you want to do something good, here's a space you can do it. So that's always been our posture, so to speak.
Yeah, mashallah. I'm super inspired by you, and I know our youth are. And so this is our last question coming from us. We're soon going to open the floor to the audience. But what is the last thing you want our youth to take away from your being here? What is your advice?
My number one advice is the world is going to have lots of challenges, and there's no heroes. Like, I know you're saying I'm inspiring. I'm actually not that inspiring, but that's, we'll have be committed not to people, but to doing good work for yourself and for the community. There's going to be lots of people who disappoint you in life. So many. It's just one of those things. Right? If you tie your inspiration to a person, a specific person, or a specific, human being, it's possible that person could let you down and your whole world could crumble. But if you tie yourself to a particular set of values, I'm going to be a good person, I'm going to be a polite person, I'm going to try my best. I'm going to mess up, but when I mess up, I'm going to get up and try again. You will have a much more easier way of processing life than somebody who says, oh, that guy's so inspiring. And then one day you wake up and you hear that guy did this, or that guy did that, or that lady is like this, or you have an experience where, the person who you thought was going to, it's just, people are interesting like that. Like, there's so many beautiful, beautiful people in the world, so many wonderful people, but it's much safer to tie your own development as a young person to values rather than to people. Be around good people, be lovely, find good people, sit with them, don't ever leave them. If you have two friends, one enjoys shisha and Minecraft and the other enjoys going to volunteer at the masjid, stick to the volunteer at the masjid person, because she's amazing. Like, that's who you want to be around all the time, always. But tie yourself to values, because if that young woman who loves going to the masjid and volunteering suddenly flips and decides to do something else with her life, do you flip and go somewhere else? No, you have a set of values and that's who you become. So that's the last piece of advice.
Like you said, I think everyone wants to be loved by everyone, but it's really important, like you said, to tie our development to values so that we don't get disappointed, because we're all humans, so we're going to make mistakes sometimes.
100%.
So that was the last question from us. So Jazakallah khair, Mr. Al-Rawni, for all that valuable information that you shared with us. We really hope that our youth take it all in, and we're looking forward to seeing it implemented in our community. So now we're going to be opening the floor to the audience. So if you have any questions, you can write them in the comments, and we will read them out to Mr. Al-Rawni to answer. So our first question that we have is, what's one word that sums you up and your vision?
What's one word that sums me up and my vision? The one word that sums me up is probably flawed. My vision is connecting people to good work. So I feel my mission, there's the real heroes for Islamic Relief aren't the people here in Canada, although I love them. They're wonderful, wonderful people. It's the people doing the work on the other side of the world, in Gaza, Munib, in Lebanon, in Yemen, in Syria, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan. Those are the real heroes. So just making sure that people here know what those people are doing. The rest is easy.
Jazakallah khairan for that. We have a question from Siti. She says, Salam. She's just curious, are you standing? And if so, does that help your concentration?
Yes, I am standing. And does it have my concentration? Yeah, I think so. I think so. I'm just tired of sitting all through COVID, so I've gone to standing.
Jazakallah khair. And another question we have is, what are some ways that the youth can get involved in the community right now, especially with, COVID and not being able to go out?
Yeah. I think there's some really important ways. It's really rubbish that we can't get out and we can't see, each other in person. I would have loved to have been in Winnipeg. I love coming to Winnipeg. It reminds me so much of my hometown in Birmingham. But the fact that you can't do that, what do you do? The most important thing is still get together, but get together with a purpose. Get together and go through a book. Get together and go through learning. Like this whole Gaza thing has had so many people, young people, picking up people like Alain Papin's book, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, or Noam Chomsky's book, the Power, Understanding Power, or the Tafsir book, or Imam Ghazali's book, or whichever. Going through a book and really trying to develop yourself and nourish your soul with useful information. That's key. Like just developing yourself as a human being and reading, because if you consider how much time you spend reading posts online and Facebook feeds and your feed on Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat and whatever else people use, the number of words, it probably equals a book a week, but it's so scattered and random and kind of choppy and useless that it's like candy. It's not good for you. It's like having candy for lunch, breakfast, and dinner. Who does that? No one, right? Where's the wholesome food gone? Where's the breakfast? The omelette and the salan with naan and the biryani and the mendi or whatever it is people have. Like that's in books for the soul and for the brain. That's in books, and so that would be my my advice. Really get together and try and go through books to better nourish, better understand yourself.
What's your favorite book then? We want to ask you that.
My favorite book ever. Like I've got a bunch in different ranges, but if I had to say what is my favorite ever, it's probably Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. That's probably it's just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful book. I know Victor Hugo is a bit of a problematic guy who, was okay with some strange, stuff that was happening in Europe at the time, but his book is so amazing. It really is. And there's another. I mean, the book that affected me from as an activist point of view. There's a writer called Arundhati Roy. She's an Indian writer, and she wrote a book called Listening to the Grasshopper. Oh my God, that book was amazing. That book was amazing. You can still find it. I actually found it by accident. I was walking past a bookshop that was closing down, and they were selling books for £1 a book, which is like a toonie, right? I was like, okay, and I picked a bunch up, and I didn't even read the titles. Like books, they look good. They look good behind you. I started reading that book. I couldn't put it down. It was so amazing. This woman's values were so steeped in her own faith, even though she's not Muslim. As Muslims, it was a very powerful book, and she's so yeah. There's two books that I would recommend easily.
Jazakallah khair for those book recommendations. I know we probably have a lot of book lovers tuning in, so they're going to be happy about that.
That's right.
Another question, this one's from Usaid. A lot of youth have Palestine on their minds. How is it going on there, like on the floor, and what can the youth do to help?
The most important thing to do, the first thing, is to understand what's happening in Palestine, to really understand it. And there's some wonderful writers who've written some really powerful books about Palestine, some Jewish, some Palestinian. And you should read them. Like, they're very important. You should understand what's happening. The second thing to do is to show support for the Palestinian cause. And I have an older brother who refused to ever come to a demonstration when I was younger. What is the point? You go up and you go to embassy this or embassy that, and you wave your angry fist and say, you're rubbish people and what you're doing is horrible. And then you come home. You just wasted an entire day. You could have made a bit of money and donated that money, or you could have done something, right? So when I went to Gaza, I actually said to somebody, I said, listen, me and my brother keep having this fight. I keep trying to drag him off to demonstrations or to vigils or to something to show his solidarity. And he keeps telling me it's a waste of time. Now, what do you think? He started laughing. He goes, do you know when we're getting literally killed and bombed, and we hear that there's people who care about us in a part of the world we have no family, we have no friends, it's just a random part of the world where people are standing up saying this is wrong. You know how much support, moral support that gives us? I was like, no way. He said, absolutely. Because we see it. We see that you guys are standing there. We hear that you guys are doing this. And it gives us so much comfort. And it came into my head that actually, it's almost part of isolation. They say, people who go to prison say the worst type of torture is to be put in isolation for months on end or years on end. That is the worse than any physical torture. I'm like, how can it be worse than getting your hand broken and nails and all these horrible things? And this is from people who've had those things kind of happen to them. And how's that possible? It's the isolation. And what's true for an individual must be true for a community. If the people in Palestine thought they were by themselves and nobody cared and they were solo, imagine how depressed and depressing that would be, in addition to all the horribleness that's happening. So all these people in Afghanistan, these human rights activists in Saudi Arabia, these activists in Palestine, when they hear that there's people who also share their values and are concerned for them and think what's happening to them is wrong, and think people in Yemen who think what's happening to them is wrong and they're standing up for their rights, very powerful. So that's the other second thing you should do. Learn about it, talk about it, and attend as many events, both online and offline, vigils, whatever, to show your solidarity with the community. It's very powerful.
Jazakallah khair. And now I finally have an answer to anyone who asks me, what's the point?
Yes.
So if we don't get any more, this will be our final question. How has COVID impacted your work at Islamic Relief?
It's made our work a lot more difficult because a lot more people have dropped into the poverty line. Unfortunate for us, we try and help people not just in Gaza in emergency and with chronic poverty. And unfortunately, because of COVID, so many more people, hundreds of millions, are now worse off than they were this time, almost a year and a half ago now, whenever COVID started, or 18 months ago. So that's happened. Practically, from a Canadian perspective, it's just meant we've done a lot of this wonderful stuff online. We used to go to places, now we just stay in one place and we do a lot of this. And it's really, really quite powerful. So that's happening, and that's everyone. Interestingly, we thought we would raise less for good causes. We've raised more for good causes because people have also felt that if we're struggling, so are our brothers and sisters globally, and they've continued to give. So alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. And so a follow-up question to that, Islamic Relief, you guys used to send out volunteers to many different countries that needed it. So when the borders were closed and you couldn't travel, what was the substitute for that?
Well, we had a bunch of kids who we are supporting in Malaysia, for example, Rohingya kids with a school, in South Africa, in Bosnia. So what we did is we set up volunteer teachers teaching these kids online, like in a Zoom type scenario setup. We also had physicians who were doing telemedicine, supporting physicians in the other side of the world through telemedicine, saying, okay, show me what's wrong, show me this, do a scan, bring the scan, send the scan, email the scan, WhatsApp the scan. So a lot of these things were happening, which meant that we were still able to do some interesting things for volunteers overseas. And inshallah, it's coming back soon. We'll have in the Inspire program back again very soon, inshallah.
Inshallah. And alhamdulillah for internet and Google Meets or whatever we can use now.
Alhamdulillah.
So that was the last question. So Jazakallah khair again, Mr. Al-Rawni, for taking time out of your day to talk to us about this important topic. You had so many meaningful things to share with us, and we know you're very busy with all the work that you're doing to help the Ummah around the world. And we're so grateful for the effort you've put in to educating our youth and leading them to become, inshallah, future activists.
I'm really, really pleased to be here. Thank you, both of you, for taking the initiative and putting this together. And I pray, inshallah, that you continue and never despair. Just keep moving forward positively, inshallah.
And inshallah, we can start traveling again and we can have you here in Winnipeg again, inshallah.
Inshallah. We'd love that.
Jazakallah khairan.
So before we go, we have a couple of announcements. We have an event called Spread the Truth coming up on Thursday, June 3rd at 7:30 p.m. It'll be about how to advocate for Palestine online, and we hope to see you all there. We also have a game night this Friday, June 4th at 7:30 p.m. So tune in for a chance to win prizes, and the poster for that will be coming out shortly. And finally, we have a book club coming up on Saturday, June 12th at 6 p.m. So come meet other book lovers like you. And of course, Jazakallah khair everyone for tuning in and asking all these wonderful questions. We hope to see you in the coming events. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.